What's up? All right. Today we're going to do another experiment. So today we're going to do another. Let's start again. So today we're going to do another experiment. Today we're going to try out the Hoffman versus the Hedrick technique for an AeroPress. So recently, Lance Hedrick released a video where he explained a few concepts about AeroPress and how what mistakes usually beginners do while making an AeroPress. The end, he left us with a bonus AeroPress recipe. I was intrigued, and I really wanted to try it out. Um, so already there have been a couple of recipes of the AeroPress, and Hoffman's being one of the most famous. He released a recipe about a year or 2 years ago, and that's been going pretty good. It's been serving us pretty well. That's usually the first recipe that a beginner can go and try out when they're brewing with the AeroPress. But now Hedrick's come out with his um, own recipe, so that's what you're going to brew today. All right, let's get started. There's a difference in the dosage of both the recipes. I'll walk you through both the recipes once we start brewing, but that's it. And then we'll do a live tasting session, and I'll give you my views, and hopefully you let me know your views in the comments. Which one do you prefer? All right, so I'm going to put some water on the boil. We're going to use exactly the same coffee so that we don't have any differences in taste. We're just going to use the same coffee, so we're going to get that variable out for us. However, both of these recipes, they call for a different grind size. A Hedricks calls for a little bit more coarser grind size, while Hoffman always prefers to go a little bit more finer. All right, so first, let's start with the basic with Hoffman's recipe. Um, Today we're going to use again the same fraction 9 coffee that we used previously for our espresso, light roast espresso. This is a pretty good coffee. So let's start. Hoffman calls for 11 grams of beans. Also, I'm making coffee this is way past my last cup of coffee. But yeah, I wanted to try it out, so let's do that. So this is 11 grams of coffee to 200 grams of water. For us, the easy presso grind setting for a Hoffman recipe would be around 5 to 5.5. I'm just going to go to I'm going to set something in the middle, 5.2, 5.3. Cool. Let's get grinding. Another thing that I've noticed with the AeroPress is what we're going to do is basically use two filters. I know Hoffman calls for one filter in his AeroPress recipe, but I just like my AeroPress a little bit more cleaner. So I'm just going to go with two filters just to make sure we don't have that muddiness in the cup. Just slightly modifying it. Okay. Cool. Interestingly, both of the folks recommend an upright or the AeroPress in a normal position rather than an inverted position. So that's two filters. I'm going to rinse the filters in both of the recipes. It doesn't make much of a difference. It's just my preference. I just do it always. So that's on there, and we put in 11 grams of our coffee. Whew. All right. So we've got an AeroPress, our AeroPress set up. Um, Water is coming up to temp almost 92 degrees. I'm not even going to change the water temperature. The water temperature remains as is for both the recipes, because we want to control as many variables as we want, as we can, so that we get the right difference between the two brews. The only thing that's going to change is the recipe, nothing else. So water, the coffee, they remain the same. The grind size changes because the recipe calls for it. But yeah, other than that, everything pretty much remains the same. So we're almost up to temp. Let me know if you guys have tried out. Um, hey, let me know if you guys have tried out the recipe before, the Hedricks recipe or the Hoffman's recipe, and what has been your experience with it. So I'm just going to start my timer and pour in pretty quickly 200 grams of water. Okay, that's 200 grams of water, and we're just going to keep it here for the next 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, we give it a quick swirl, and then after that, 30 seconds wait, and then we plunge. So that's Hoffman's recipe. We have ground it at around 5.2 on our Easy Press OK Ultra. So anyone who wants to replicate this recipe can start off on that grind size, and you can probably do a grind size conversion between this and the Comandante. Now for the Hedricks recipe, we're going to set this to 7, which is your usual pour over style coffee. So I'm going to set it at 7, which is kind of like the pour over setting. So it's quite coarse as compared to what Hoffman recommends. So this is the Hedricks recipe. What I'm going to do is, and Hedricks recipe calls out for 15 grams of dosage, similar to a pour over profile. I'm just going to come behind the camera and monitor the chat really quick. Hey, okay, so that's 15 grams of coffee, and the same process. So it's around 158 now, and now I'm just going to give a small swirl. Now let it wait for another 30 seconds. So we've set our grinder to 7, and we're going to start grinding. I think before we start grinding, I think we'll have to start pushing. It's already at 230. Okay, 230. So I'm going to push really slowly. I don't want to muddy the cup. These filters, I don't know why, but these filters are not that great in catching those fines. That's why I always use 2 filters. Whatever recipe I use, I ensure I'm using 2 filters just for that extra bit of clarity. Otherwise, it just muddies the taste a lot. I'm pushing so slowly. It's almost been 30 seconds. It's almost 45 seconds. In fact, we started pushing from 2 minutes 30 seconds. Now it's almost 3:15, and we're at the end of this. And we're done. I'm not going to push through the hiss again. Hedrick also calls for that. We don't want to push through the hiss. We don't want unnecessary muddiness in our cup. So we're just going to leave it as is. You see this is not something that we need in our cup. Smells good. I'm just going to keep this, To maintain the temperature, we're just going to keep it here till we brew. Quick cleanup. So we have our AeroPress reset. These are two filters. I'm just going to pour into this just to make sure that we don't even have cross contamination from the brews. We want to make sure we treat it like a science experiment. We don't want any cross contaminations. We want to reduce as many variables. We want to see which comes out on the top. If you've tried it before, let me know which one do you like more. So this is 15 grams of coffee, ground medium. I won't say medium coarse, just normal medium. I think it's even towards the finer end of medium, but like Hoffman's was pretty much finer. It was almost like a mocha pot grind for me, a dark roast mocha pot grind, not a light roast mocha pot grind. So that's this thing. Also, I have noticed that the same coffee smells a little bit different, like for different grind sizes. Like this one smells a little sweeter. That one smells a little bit more citric. So yeah, let me know if you any like if you've experienced this as well. Okay, so 15 grams of coffee in. Hedricks calls for lower agitation during the first phase of your this thing. He even calls for a bloom. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to. I have a mellow drip here. I'm just going to heat it up so that we don't lose any temperature. So he calls for a lower agitation so that we don't disturb the bed, and we're going to bloom it for like 30 to 45 seconds. That's your preference, and then we're going to updose it till 250. The same thing that you would do for a regular pour over. All right. I'm just going to start this. So bloom it with 45 grams. I'm not going to put this back on. Just going to let it drip. If you see, there's much less drip as compared to the Hoffman's recipe. It's just that because we've lowered the agitation while pouring in the coffee, which means that the coffee's now got the time to absorb the water. And now we are at 45 seconds. So I'm just going to pour it all the way up to 250 grams. And pretty much quickly. All right, that's 250 grams. And we're just going to give one swirl, sorry, one paddle left to right and one paddle top to bottom. That's it. I'm not sure whether he calls for agitation, but this has worked well for me. Now the tedious part of this entire brew is we've got to wait, and we can wait as long as we want. So I prefer waiting around 3 minutes for this brew. It really brings out that sweetness. It really rounds off that brew completely. So I like doing more immersion than this thing. So I'm going to open this once we are at time and once I start plunging, and I'm going to plunge really slow. So we're at 2 minutes. So Hedrick, yeah, Hedrick calls out for like waiting around 2 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 seconds to 3 minutes. I'm just going to wait till 3 minutes because I've tried this before. It works well with this coffee. 3 minutes is the one that works well. But what I've not done is done a comparison side by side. So that's what I'm doing today. Um, so that we can all learn something out of this. Hey, I'm just going to adjust this much. Okay, cool. Um, we are at 2 minutes 40 seconds. So I'm just going to keep this open now so that this has gotten a chance to cool down. And once we start to taste, we will be at the exact same temperature. So I'm just going to give this a small swirl and push. I am not pushing aggressively. I'm just keeping my hand on the top, and it's just going to go like no change whatsoever in the pressure. Just by the weight of my hand, I'm just pushing it. If you feel that you have to apply some force, you probably need to grind a little bit coarser. Um, but yeah, for this, but this is only towards the start. By the end of the brew, the puck becomes dense. So you will have to apply some force, but it should not be like you're pressing into it. And you can press as slowly as you want. So we are already at 45 seconds. I'm going to probably go up till a minute or so. If you can see, the water is a little bit like the brew is a little bit darker as compared to Hoffman's. uh, it's also, I think it's going to be a little bit more extracted. Even though there was a finer grind, the bed depth was shallow. It leaves room for a lot of errors. So let's see. But as long as the coffee tastes good, pretty much there. Okay, so I'm just going to cool this down, and yep, that's it. Now we have both of our brews ready. This would be the Hoffman's, right? I'm just going to keep this down, give this a little bit more time to cool down. This smells nice. We can even do a smell test. This smells a little bit weaker. To me, at least, it smells a little bit weaker. It's not that strong. Okay, time for Hedricks. Hedricks, Hoffman's. All right, first I'm going to try Hoffman's because that's the one everyone's familiar with. It's a little weaker brew. It's not as strong. Um, not really a lot of flavors in there. It has, just because this coffee is very citric forward, so it has a lot of those lemon flavors, but not a lot of sweetness in this. Okay, I'm just going to, I don't have another cup, so I'm going to drink out of my cappuccino cup. I've cleared my palate. So the verdict is not a strong citrus forward. It's okay. It's a good cup. It's not bad. Probably might go a little bit more finer, but I might introduce bitterness. Now Hedricks. Hmm. Up front, there's a lot of flavor in here. Um, it's more sweeter for sure. Hmm. This is a lot more sweeter. I can get those pineapple flavors out of it, and it's a little bit citrusy as well. So there's a lot of pineapple. There's a lot of sweetness in this cup. Um, I'm just gonna go ahead and taste Hoffman's once again. Hmm. That's a little muted on the flavors. Um, so that's uh, it's a more rounded profile. That's how I would describe it. Um, but it kind of feels I can still extract a little bit more from this cup. There's a lot more going on, a lot more to give in this coffee from this recipe. So probably might be a brewing error. I can go a little bit more finer. Um, but this is like very sweet, very well rounded. There's a lot of separation of flavors as well. I can get that citrus note, I can get that pineapple note. um, yeah, it's pretty good. I can even, in fact, once the coffee started, so this is almost down to drinking temperature. This coffee is now started to cool down, so I'm getting more of this mango as well, mango along with that pineapple. um, but yeah, this was a fun experiment. um, Maybe some coffees work better with Hoffman's, probably some light roasted. Maybe I can go like with a higher temperature with Hoffman's, just because it's a low, the time to brew is around 2 minutes. So maybe we can up the temperature in this brew. But for this coffee, for this method, I am preferring Hedrick over Hoffman. It's just that less variables to control, less margin of error, there's less room for error. So you would always get good cups out of this. Even if you grind it a little bit more coarser, you can just steep it a little longer. The longer you steep, the more flavors, the more sweetness you're going to get out of the cup. Same as what you would assume for like a cold brew kind of a situation. You'll just get more flavor out of the same coffee. But I think Hedrick's um, Hedrick's method would work for most of these grinders, since he's calling for a much more coarser grind size. Um, Usually, grinders that are not so that produce a lot of fines, they tend to work in a more coarser range, to give you the same flavor profile. Whereas the Hoffman's recipe would probably work for a much better grinder. Example for example, the Comandante or the K Ultra. But if you have a grinder that tends to produce a lot of fines, like the Time C2 or the J Max that we've seen before. Um, okay, this coffee, once it's cooled down, there's still a lot of flavors in it. But yeah, my taste preference still lies with Hedrick's recipe. Um, Yeah, so this Hedricks recipe would work more for, like I said, for grinders which are not that optimized for fines production. If But they do work well for optimized grinders as well. You just might grind a little finer, and you can get the same results. Hoffman's recipe, probably you need a good grinder, um, just because on the finer settings you're just going to get a lot of astringency, a lot of bitterness coming through. Um, I'm not sure if Hoffman's recipe would work for darker roasted coffee, um, but for lighter roasted coffee, 11 gram to 200 gram dose or brew ratio is pretty much skewed towards 18 point something, point one, I believe. Um, that is a brew ratio. Um, there that might not work well with most of these coffees. It might work well with coffees that are dense, like some Ethiopian beans, which kind of need more water to just extract a lot more. Before most of these Indian coffees, I think a 1 is to 16 or 1 is to 17, pushing it higher, 1 is to 17 is still fine. But 1 is to 18 is just too much water. It's just going to dilute your taste a lot. This cup is very nice. All right, this was a fun brewing experiment. Let me know your thoughts. Which kind of recipes do you prefer? I'm just going to come back and check the chat. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Let me know what kind of which recipe would you prefer? Do you prefer the Hoffman's recipe or do you prefer the Hedricks recipe? Um, what grinder do you have and what works best for your grinder? Do let me know. If you are looking or if you're in the market for like the AeroPress, I mentioned a few links in the description that might help you, so that you can also go ahead and do this experiment. But do share me your views. All right, so let's see you in the next one.